You're listening to the Virtue Podcast, brought to you by the Great Hearts Institute. Good conversations around the great conversation. Welcome back to the Virtue Podcast, and I am so pleased today to introduce a new friend to me who is a child advocate committed deeply to the flourishing of young people. She's a litigation attorney and basically just one of my favorite new friends. Liz Huntley, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you believe we met up there in your hometown, Birmingham, Alabama, just to be clear. That was just a couple of months ago. And somehow I was able to finagle to get you out to Phoenix next week for our symposium. I don't know how I did it because you're a pretty busy lady.
Well, I'm excited to be a part of what you all are doing. You do amazing work, and we're all in the same game.
We are indeed. We are indeed. And that game, as we're going to talk about it next week at the symposium, includes the development of young people, body, spirit, the whole thing, right? Their souls are at stake. And we talk about this in a variety of ways, intellectual and moral development. But one of the terms that we use frequently is character education. Character education. This is something you've gotten involved with over the years. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit of that story.
Sure. So, I have my own personal story that I was able to put into memoir form, which has allowed me the opportunity to go around the country and into Canada speaking to educators about the impact of a school. And, and it was really not so much the academic impact that had such a huge impact on my life, coming from where my parents were drug dealers. My mom committed suicide. I was sexually abused, in and out of foster homes, all these things. But it was the school that God used to get me through it, not to fix it. None of those things were fixed, but it helped me through it. And so it started to occur to me as I was sort of on this journey, thinking that my sole ministry was to just inspire educators and remind them through my personal story about how important their role is in the life of a child, by using the examples in my life of educators in my school and that level of influence. And I was approached by a dear friend of mine at Drake Neighbors, who is the co-founder of the Hope Institute that we started, that challenged me to get involved with him in actually formalizing an approach to assisting schools or equipping them with what they would need to build a culture of character in their schools. Because at the end of the day, the school experience is everything to me in the life of a child. And that's from my personal experience. And is also from what we know. I mean, me being a child advocate, what I've learned over the years, through science and statistics and data, we know how important it is. Because when you think about a school, a lot of people think, well, there's so much data that a school touches a kid's life, maybe 13 to 30% of their life during that time frame that they're in school. But I like to look at it a little differently through my lens, which is this. We know that, about 270 days of the year, if you include all the weekends and the holidays and breaks, school is the predominant thing in the life of a child. It may not be the predominant thing in terms of hours, but it's certainly the predominant thing in that time. That's a huge chunk of a child's life, much bigger than just measuring it by the actual wake hours that they're spending in school. Because when you're in school, that experience is affecting everything. It's affecting how you behave. It's affecting how you behave outside of school. It's affecting, if school's positive, it's giving you hope, because it's giving you the expectation of something good to look forward to in the face of all your adversities, like what I went through in school. And so we want to talk about where we can really impact children and help play a role in growing good kids and not just smart kids. That's in a school. It's where it's at. And 95% of our children in America are in a school of some form, whether it be private, charter, or public school. I mean, less than 6% actually do homeschooling. So this is the space if you're going to make that impact.
Well, you have taken up that challenge that your friend gave you And you've taken it up with great zeal. Of course, I don't know if you do anything without zeal, Liz, from what I can tell. The energy, the passion is palpable. But what I'm really curious about, because your story was, in fact, and is inspiring, you realized you needed to take the story and translate that into something practical that school teachers and school leaders could use in developing their own approach to this type of formation of the young person. Tell me a little bit about what went into that. And you've mentioned it. The Hope Institute is the organization that you founded. Tell us just a little bit about what went into the nuts and bolts of the Hope Institute as you're now working with hundreds of educators to give them some sense of what they can do to truly impact, as you say, the lives of those young people, but to give those young people the very hope that they need.
Well, we understood in shaping the Hope Institute that knowledge is out there, the knowledge about a culture, a climate, character education, what it means, and all of those things. But what we attempted to do, and I think we've done successfully, is to create an academy that provided school teams with real practical tools to
Mhm.
equip them with what they would need to do this work to transform their school into a culture of character. And so through that, we hired an executive director, a professor at Sanford University, Dr. Kara Chisholm, developed a curriculum that was really a culmination of input from the Dr. Thomas Laconas of the world and
Mhm.
and all of the Arthur Schwartz at character.org, all of these what I call character giants that
Mm.
have lived and breathed this work, for a majority of their professional lives, and they developed our leadership team, developed of educators,
Mhm.
developed a curriculum for this academy for our school teams. So the teams come to the academy to get the knowledge, right? To get the knowledge and
Right.
sort of to work together as teams outside of the school setting on customizing what would work for their school, because we recognize that every school is different demographically, different
Mhm.
geographically, so many things go into that school community that makes it unique. And
Mhm.
so how do we, not a one size fits all, how do we create a way to deliver this knowledge to school teams from diverse school backgrounds that they can then customize and utilize to develop their own cultures of character within their school building? And really, the thing that happened organically, that made it more than just professional development and just the academy, is that our first executive director, Dr. Kara Chisholm, was genius in that not only did we provide the academy for the schools to come and learn 6 times a year in
Mhm.
this setting with all of these amazing folks from around the world that do the work, but she would then spend time with them at their school buildings in between the sessions to
Ah.
really, in a hands-on, peer facilitator way, help them along that journey. Because you know how it is with any professional development. It doesn't matter what profession you're in. You go to the PD, you're inspired, you're fired
Mhm.
up, you get the
Mhm.
materials, you put them in your briefcase, and you're headed back saying, I am going to do this. This is amazing. It makes sense. And then you get back to wherever your profession is, and life happens and work happens. And you don't always. So having that facilitator that joins the journey with the school,
Mhm.
that's there as a guide, that's there as a support, and in some cases, as asked by the school, somewhat of an accountability partner,
Right.
so depending on where the school is in terms of how engaged the facilitator is. So that sort of evolved out of that first academy that we had 4 years ago. And then it became a permanent part of our model, where not only do we have the leadership academy that they attend, but they also have a facilitator that's assigned to their cohort that works with them at their site, at their school, on their journey.
So you drew from material that was already existent. You mentioned Arthur Schwartz at character.org, a couple of the giants in character and virtue education that you cited. You took some of those materials and brought them together at the Hope Institute under the leadership of your executive director in a way that these schools could access. Tell me, what were some of the challenges in taking the thinking of the giants and making that as practical as the schools need it? You're right to say each school is a one of a kind, right? It's distinct in its demography and its geography and so forth. But what were some of the challenges as you're trying to take great ideas and put those into practical steps, right? That those teams can adopt.
Yeah, so Dr. Chisholm and later Dr. Jody Newton, who we lost to lung cancer last year,
Hmm.
they were really genius in this in terms of how do we take from these character giants the things that would be common to everybody,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
That could then give those examples. So it took a lot of work of working with Tom Lacona, who does sort of the introductory lesson of as you talk about the sort of, I call him the godfather of character ed in terms of the virtues, right? And synthesizing that in such a way to where that message and it was delivered in a way that's applicable to any school that would be sitting in the audience.
Right.
And then the more practical things of using character.org's 11 principles as sort of a guiding framework. Again, what our schools choose to do is up to them, that works for them. But it was so extremely helpful to have those principles out there to help them sort of practically understand, what does this look like? What
Right.
does a finished product looks like? And so those were, and then Dr. Marvin Berkowitz, who has his primed model, who has another option, for schools
Yep.
to look at in terms of an approach. So just sort of, and then the very, very practical, one of our faves for the Academy is Dr. Amy Johnson. Dr. Johnson was a principal who successfully did this in a school and turned it around.
Okay.
And so she is so well received by the Academy because she was there. She
She
was a
lived it.
principal
Yep.
that did it and understand all their challenges with buy-in with faculty and all of the hurdles you have to go overcome in order to fully do this work. And then we rounded out at the end of the year with Clifton Talbert, who wrote The 8 Habits of the Heart and just is a magnificent soul to really help people understand the foundation of all of this is creating a caring community. I mean, it has to start there.
Yeah.
Caring community is the foundation of this work. So, kicking off our year and then having 2 other sessions in addition to that I facilitate along with my co-founder, Drayton Neighbors, has really created a really robust exposure of knowledge and practical ideas to
Mm.
the schools that attend the Academy.
That synthesis of ideas or theory, if you will, and practice is what's so impressive to me. And it's been to now, how many schools is the Hope Institute working with?
Over 170 schools
That's incredible.
that we've worked with. We're currently working with 80 schools in our academies from
Right.
year 1, year 2, year 3 that cover a good portion of the state of Alabama.
And as you just expressed, those schools will be with you over the course of 3 years. So that
Yes.
that immersion into character education continues in successive years, so that the practices become a part of the life of the school, right? The ordinary habits of that school. Is that right?
Absolutely. It becomes who you are.
Yeah.
It becomes who you are and how you exist as a school.
Yeah.
And this it's almost sort of the character of the school, right?
Right. Right.
In terms of what people see. And so this can't be done in a one PD and go back and check off a list.
Right.
There are lots of tools out there that our schools use that are good supplements to the deeper work, right? That help you build programs to meet the goals of those principles that are out there, whether it be primed or the Jubilee Center or the 11 principles. So there are lots of tools that help you do programmatic things in your building. But at the end of the day, it's much bigger than that. And that's the call for the schools to actually go on a real journey of true
Hmm.
transformation.
Hmm.
And anything that's transformed at that level, it can't happen overnight.
Not at all. And I guess what's so attractive about the work that you've been doing now with these 170 schools is the fact that they are being transformed. And that suggests that the status quo, sort of the typical school model where we're just delivering instruction and hopefully giving them the information and equipping them academically, is simply not enough, because what you at the Hope Institute are doing and what these schools have signed on for is a much more thoroughgoing understanding of what it means to be human. And I say that in part just because I'm interested, and you hear me, I keep pushing against, keep questioning you around what are the challenges, right? What are some of the difficulties? I imagine that this 3-year process, as I think you're implying, suggests that this isn't easy, because again, our mainstream culture and ordinary schools just don't think like this. So if I can say it one more time, are there challenges that you're seeing that the schools are describing, right? Difficulties that they're having as they work through this transforming cultural model of the school? That's important, because I think we need to let folks know, to be honest, it won't be easy, but it's worth it. So tell me, are there some difficulties that the schools are identifying in going through the process?
Absolutely. So, I'm not an educator myself, just a person who's madly in love with educators because I understand their role in the lives of kids. In fact, I'm married to an educator. Uh, but, I am a person who, in this leadership role, understand a lot about implementation and
Mhm.
how do we take what we've learned and it translates into successful action,
Right.
in the building. And so one of the things that we did and received some generous benefactors to support us with was we hired Parker, which is our objective research council here in the state of Alabama, to do a qualitative and quantitative analysis of our
Hmm.
work over a
Mhm.
3-year period to answer that very question. Like, how do we take a deep dive into understanding the challenges of our schools? Because even though we've had a lot of schools with a lot of successes, we've also had schools that didn't return the second
Sure,
year,
sure.
or went all 3 years and haven't seen the success of the other years. So we've got to unpack that and get to the bottom of it. And there are lots of things. I will say that I think the number one thing is leadership. You've got to
Mhm.
have the leader in the building to buy in, to
Mhm.
really be engaged with the work and understand that doing this transformative work becomes your plate. It's not another thing on your plate,
Right, right.
but it is your plate, because if you do this, all the other things will follow, like we've seen in our schools. The discipline referrals go down, the attendance goes up, the morale is better among your faculty and staff in the building. So those things that you're looking from a business perspective to try to fix piecemeal, focusing on this really is the plate, because it will support the good metrics that come in those other areas that we typically look at as check marks when we're
Sure.
evaluating a school and how successful it is. So that's the number one thing, really getting the leader in the school to buy in. The second challenge is getting the people in the building to buy in.
Mhm.
When folks come to what I call the Hope Institute show, when they come to the academy, I mean, they are immersed in it, and all of our data and surveys and the Parka report shows that they love what they get when they come to the academy, no
Right.
doubt. But the entire faculty does not attend the academy, only the 4 to
Uh-huh.
5 member team. So
Right.
then there's the challenge of going back to the building and getting them just as fired up and excited about doing the work, when, quite frankly, let's be practical here. You're sitting in your classroom working all day, and they're off spending a whole day in Birmingham having a great meal, off in this thing, and they want to come back and tell you how great it is. I mean,
Sure.
educators are human. I'm married to
Sure,
one, right?
sure. That's right.
And then they also feel like it's something you're adding to my plate,
Mm,
and what does this even look like in a classroom? I'm a science teacher. How do I teach character?
right.
So the challenge of being able to then get the buy-in at the school, because if the faculty doesn't buy in, it can't be successful, not
That's right.
school-wide.
That's right.
And so I would say that those are the two greatest challenges, and that impacts implementation. One of the challenges I think we've addressed really well is, now that we've had so much success, is starting to articulate how ed leaders in buildings have overcome those challenges.
Yep.
We have a Hope Fellows program where we have 10 of what we call our rock stars in character ed right there in Alabama that have successfully implemented this work in their own school systems. And they are doing coffee talks and some peer helping and other things to help principals and school leaders and school teams address some of the challenges that they face themselves, because these aren't unique to
That's
any
right.
school. They're just natural things that happen. So I would say those are the some of the top challenges for the schools.
Well, I love how the Hope Institute has really just evolved organically, because what began with your inspiring story and the work of your co-laborers to build out this program is, as I hear you describing it, evolving into the fellows programs. You're getting the word of mouth out there. The 170 schools are no doubt going to connect with another 170 in time. And the momentum behind this is really something of a movement coming out of the Hope Institute. It's truly, truly remarkable. So this gives you a platform, Liz, and you've been going, as you said, across the country and even north of the border and elsewhere to tell your story, tell schools and school leaders and teachers that this is something that they can be a part of. If you were to give that elevator pitch, as they call it, right, with a few talking points, how would you persuade a teacher who, just as you said, heard from a colleague who got to go away on the little junket? Oh, this is so wonderful. You've got it. How would you try to articulate the essential features of character education for that hardworking, sometimes overworked teacher who thinks to themselves, what? I've got more work to do? What would you say to them, Liz?
I would say this. I would tell them thank you, first of all, for their service. I
Mhm.
think that educators are servants in this country that don't get the appreciation that they deserve. But then I would also say that I know that they weren't called to be an educator to get rich. I'm married to one, so that certainly isn't the motivation. They were called because they wanted to help young people. And I know that they're called to help young people more than just the curriculum and academic subject matter that they're teaching. That they don't want them to be just smart kids, they want them to be good kids. And
Mhm.
so the Hope Institute will help provide them with the resources they need to do that in a way where it integrates seamlessly in the work that they're already doing in their classroom, and in a way that's custom to them, instead of us telling you this is what you're going to do. Now, when that happens, that is something added to your plate, right? You're
Mhm.
going to do
Mhm.
this, you're going to do it
Yep.
this way, that's not unique to your personality and your style. We have teachers, they're so creative when you give them the space to do it, to find their approach and their way. We have schools that do their morning meeting with their kids with a true sit down meeting to kind of assess the room before the class starts, to teachers that, because they're not the huggers and the, folks of that personality, they have an emoji bowl and a kid comes up and shows the emoji to the teacher each day so the teacher can assess. I mean, teachers are brilliant and they
Mm,
love kids, and they are, you talk about figuring out how to do things out of necessity, right?
that's right.
They'll have a challenging kid in a room and they'll figure out, what can I do to get that kid to cooperate with me so they're not disruptive, and they find the sweet spot. I mean, they do this every single day.
Yes, they do.
And so I would just remind them of that skill that they already have.
Mhm.
And what we're trying to help them do is develop it really systematically in a way that creates this really nurturing, positive character building experience in their classroom, which is not just good for their kids, but it's good for them.
That's right. That's right. And what I also hear you saying is that those individuals will find themselves in solidarity with their coworkers, their fellow teachers, if the leadership of that school can bring an integrated and coherent understanding of character that everyone in the building recognizes is good for the kids and good for us, as you said so well.
Absolutely. And the really successful principals that I've interacted with through Hope Institute, they start with their faculty culture first,
Yep.
and really focusing in on letting the faculty know as the leader that they care about them, and that they're important, to them in the building, and then taking that through, really team building activities and different exercises that they do with their faculty to build up that sense of family and caring community within the faculty.
That's right.
Is how do you ask a faculty to start to engage in a caring community towards the children when the faculty team itself doesn't have a caring community? And so the smart leaders get that, and they start first with that faculty environment.
Well, this is part of why I was just determined to have you out to Phoenix next week, Liz, because you do understand the centrality of school culture, of that spirit of the place, right? That esprit de corps, that if it's working, that is to say, if it's healthy, it permeates everything we do, right? Every classroom, every exchange in the hallway, when we meet with parents after school and so forth and so on, it really is fundamental. So school culture is going to be something we talk about at length. And obviously, from your own experience working with these educators, hundreds of educators, we're going to hope to suss some of that out from you. You've mentioned several resources that we'll put in the show notes after we conclude. But I'd like to know, are there some big projects or any publications that we should be looking for that'll be coming out of the Hope Institute in the year ahead?
Yes. So our co-founder, Drake Neighbors, has already written a book called Priceless that sort of captures sort of the journey of us getting to where we are. And then there's been a part 2 to the book called Hope, in it deeper exploring the hope that comes from being in a school with a positive culture. And we're working on a third part of that won't be authored by Drayton, but will be authored by our fellows. And that is a collection of ideas around the very thing you just talked about, and that's implementation. Some real practical nuggets that can be useful to our schools and to any school in the country or anywhere that would like the resource of the guide. That sort of, coffee talk stories, if you will,
right,
of how they were able to overcome those challenges, because we've recognized that we have enough of those experiences now under our belt with our schools to be able to put them in a good guide that we hope can be useful to not just the schools in Hope Academy, but any principal ed leader that would like to pick it up and get some practical wisdom.
I love the fact that this beautiful plant, this beautiful organism that's come out of Birmingham, Alabama, is now going to be fruitful and hopefully multiply across this country. If folks want to learn more, Liz, about the Hope Institute, where do they need to go?
They could simply go to the website, hopeinstitute.org, and there you can not only learn about what we do and some summaries of how we do it, but we also have a podcast. And you can link to the podcast there on the website. And Dr. Jennifer Hogan does a magnificent job of sort of continuing to send out nuggets, if you will, of the steps and the phases of this journey and this process for schools and what we're learning through the Hope Institute. So it's a great way to get plugged into what we're doing.
Well, that's fantastic. And for anyone who's interested in hearing more of Liz's story, she's going to be with us and live streamed next Friday at 12:30. And so if you aren't able to make it to Phoenix in person, you can drop into our symposium. You'll just go to greathearts.institute and we'll give you all the details in terms of Liz's work, but you can hear her live and even ask her a question through the medium that we'll be pushing it out with. So Liz, we look forward to seeing you next week. So thankful that you could join us today.
I'm so excited about it.
You have a great day, Liz.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Registration for the 2023 National Symposium for Classical Education is now open. Join us February 22nd through the 24th in Phoenix, Arizona for 3 days of unsurpassed scholarship, professional workshops, and networking opportunities. For more information, visit www.greathearts.institute. Working together to renew the tradition.